and welcome to Good Game, the show for gamers by gamers. I'm Barjo.
And I'm Hex. On the show this week, we get down and stealthy with our old friend Sam Fisher in the latest Splinter Cell, Conviction.
And we settle into some serious town planning and resource management with Settlers 7.
Plus, in a World Cup year, we head to the qualifiers for the FIFA 10 World Championships and meet the gamers vying for the right to represent Australia in Barcelona later this year.
Might as well make money out of doing something that, instead of being a couch potato.
And in Backwards Compatible, we look at classic games remade for the modern day. But first, can you guess the game for this week? News time, Hex.
Apple has announced the imminent release of Game Center for iPhone. This integrated service will add a social layer to your iPhone gaming, allowing for online multiplayer, matchmaking, leaderboards, and achievements, not unlike Xbox Live. Game Center will launch later this year with the release of the OS 4.0 update. After their acrimonious split with Activision, ex-Infinity Ward heads Zampella and West have teamed up with Electronic Arts to form a new development studio called Respawn Entertainment. Zampella is quoted as saying they're looking forward to hiring a new team to create brand new games for EA.
I want to wake up.
The next game from Crytek has taken a turn for the literary. The German developer has revealed that the award-winning sci-fi author Richard Morgan will be penning the script for Crysis 2. Acclaimed for sculpting worlds where edgy tech merges with pulp fiction, Morgan's hit novels include Altered Carbon and The Steel Remains. Good news for Doctor Who fans, the BBC will be publishing 4 free-to-play episodic adventure games online to tie in with the new series.
What have you got for me this time?
The games are being produced by Sumo Digital.
I'm a doctor. I'm a time traveller.
The games will be available from June at the official Doctor Who website. The Beeb is also investigating making games spin-offs of other hot properties such as Top Gear and In the Night Garden.
Good game.
Well, the Settlers franchise is in no danger of fading away, with the 7th game in the series, Path to a Kingdom, settling in with that tried and true economic and military strategy and a brand new graphics engine to boot.
I haven't played a Settlers game in years, but the first thing I did notice was that huge graphical facelift. I also loved the new sort of fairy tale / comic style art direction.
The kingdom of Tandria lies in disarray. King Baldurus has been exiled from his lands by Lord Wolverine and his Dark Knight Dracorian.
There are some great 3D views of the action in the city, and camera control is superb, which is excellent because success in this game really relies on setting up good flowing supply lines. This is a really polished game, as long as you're not one of the unlucky ones that was locked out of the game due to Ubisoft's new digital rights management system. We didn't have any problems though.
The single-player campaign begins in the fictitious country of Tandria. You play as Princess Zoe, who's been sent in to sort out the colonies by her father to eventually take her place as monarch.
I shall, Father. I shall do as you wish.
You'll of course start with a tutorial, which will lead you into a bunch of story missions, but there's also multiplayer and skirmish modes as well.
As well as your standard military and trade paths, Settlers 7 also sees you taking on a new strategic track, science. This will see you focusing on researching technical upgrades. Research takes place at religious structures by monks who need to be kept happy with food and beer. Otherwise, you can always expand your trade routes or hone your military strategy by building up armies of pikemen and musketeers for ranged attacks.
Just like your monks need beer, your musketeers need fancy food, and this requires butchers and hunters to be placed in game-filled areas. In the later missions, it gets complicated quite quickly, and you really need to make use of every square inch. You need to put the right buildings in the right areas to get that production flow happening, otherwise you just won't get the soldiers you need. Be successful at this and you'll get what's called victory points, and you can lose these just as easily as you get them, and it can be quite tense fighting it out trying to hold on to these VPs.
You can now give your army more precise move and attack orders, and this makes for far more precise play, particularly in the skirmish modes. The AI is really on the ball this time, so you'll need to make sure that the order in which you capture resource nodes is well thought out, otherwise you'll be floundering around while the enemy is encroaching on your turf.
Oh no, enemy troops conquered your sector.
So how did your micromanagement skills fare in this one, Hex?
Yeah, not great. I kept trying to make the most of all the resources and the subsequent products that would come from them, but my little plants would stop production all the time, and it's not always obvious why. I mean, sometimes it would tell you that, an item was missing or the resource had been exhausted, but other times I was completely stumped and I just couldn't work out why nothing would go the way I wanted it to. Damn musketeers and their fancy food, just eat bread like everyone else.
Yeah, at times I find I'd just be clicking away furiously on my tavern trying to commission more guys, but they just weren't interested in doing anything until I'd sorted out my production line better. But space was so limited, I found I was just randomly destroying buildings trying to get that perfect balance of tools, food, and gear, and it was really quite hard work. Thanks to the new 3D engine, I can see the boar in the forest, now just go and get them.
Settler 7 also has a pretty good in-game customization tool that allows you to create your own snazzy castle. There's also a custom map editor if you want to get finicky about the available resources and victory conditions.
I found that no matter which strategy you take, you always need to focus on military development because, just like in previous games, there's lots of neutral armies around the territories and you need to send in troops to convert them to your side.
Ah yes, the all too familiar node capture, but how did you find the game all up?
I think there's a reason why Settlers is successful enough to pump out 7 of these games, and it's just a case of not messing with a good thing. There's good addictive strategy here, and I think fans of the series will like the graphical update. It's like a layer of tasty icing over what's really a serious game of resource management. I'm giving it 7.5 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Look, approaching this game having not been a fan of the series, I have to be honest, there wasn't a lot here that grabbed me. I can see that it's a solid game and I did have some fun for a while, but I also found it quite frustrating, and city builders can be really fun, but Settler 7 didn't really do anything groundbreaking. It's a 6.5 from me.
Have you seen the creepy trailer?
No?
It's like a Windows 7 party.
I was gonna have one of those.
Sometimes a game is just too good to die. Games publishers know this because they squeeze every last cent out of their old titles with re-releases, special editions, and ports.
And while retro cash-ins aren't really anything new, God knows we've seen enough old coin-op compilations, it's the reboot, or reimagining if you will, that has the greater potential to spectacularly succeed or epically fail. Pac-Man Championship Edition got a shake-up by the game's original creator, Toru Iwatani, as his final game before retirement. Instead of just chomping through the same pattern of pills over and over, Pac-Man CE introduced widescreen levels, a time limit system, and more subtle gameplay changes, like Pac-Man getting to respawn on the spot where he died.
This was certainly no lame repackaged hit. It really gave Packy a brand new lease on life.
Namco didn't stop there. Next was Space Invaders Extreme, a retro remake that had the balls to introduce boss battles, weapon power-ups, and weird challenge levels to a game that's now about as sacred as Pong.
The controls stayed true to the original, only allowing you to move left, right, and shoot. But gunning for the high scores was made all the more frantic with all the new elements, not to mention psychedelic explosions!
Both are really good remakes, Badge. They retain most of the core elements that made the originals great and yet make them feel fresh all over again. Oh, and there's also Galaga Legions now too.
Warning. Large energy concentration detected.
Another gem. While Namco stuck to the 2D approach, Capcom took a much greater risk when they decided to bring ghouls and ghosts back from the dead. Sophia!
Maximo!
The oddly titled Maximo on PS2 recaptured that cartoony undead atmosphere of Arthur's Quest from the old arcade game, despite making the switch to 3D.
Boom. What? Not afraid of death?
Enemies and items were all instantly recognizable, and the simple jump and attack gameplay honored the hardcore platforming of the original.
I think it's probably just a bit of a shame that they didn't stick to the old bearded Arthur though. I must say Maximo did have the same fine taste in undergarments.
Another game which recently made the switch from 2D to 3D, though rather unsuccessfully, was Bionic Commando.
It just goes to show that sometimes it can be a bit of a disaster trying to transfer old 2D gameplay mechanics into a 3D engine.
Totally. The downloadable game Bionic Commando Rearmed was a gazillion times better because it stuck to the tried and true side-scrolling formula, which better suited the grapple-tastic gameplay. Definitely worth a download on that one, Hex.
Of course, jazzing up an old game is less problematic when it was 3D in the first place. What's this?
Jazz hands.
The 10th anniversary of Tomb Raider saw Lara Croft get a facelift, with the original game getting Botoxed, liposuctioned, and injected with digital collagen. This was a chance for IDOS to fix up those things that we didn't like about the first game, recreating all the original levels with the superior Tomb Raider Legend engine.
It was cool getting to play with Lara's more advanced skill set in the context of the original adventure, and it was a relief to return to the exploration of actual tombs again. Overall, a clever gelling of nostalgia with contemporary gameplay.
Now, there's one company that has mastered the remake so successfully that half the time we don't even notice that we're playing the same old games over and over again, and that's Nintendo. Mario Brothers, Super Smash Brothers, Mario Kart, Pokemon. Nintendo continues to pump them out for each new hardware generation.
More story-driven titles like Zelda and Metroid have evolved as true sequels, but Nintendo's arcade-style games pretty much stay the same because, well, they do just keep on selling, so you can't really blame them for that. Endless remakes of our favourite old games are an inevitable fixture on the gaming landscape. So remember, the next time you really love a new game, you'll probably be playing a version of it in 20 years' time.
Good game.
Mail time!
Mail? What is it? Is it games? It's games, isn't it? I bet it's games.
No, it's Field Story in a can, although it appears to be recorded on some ancient technology that's beyond my comprehension. Must be from space.
Give it here, you Luddite. So easy. Eat it.
Welcome to the wide world of esports. We're coming to you direct from the Sydney Royal Easter Show with this, the final qualifying tournament of the FIFA Interactive World Cup 2010. As we join the competition, the second round of eliminations have just commenced and the initial 64 competitors have been whittled down to just 32 of the country's best FIFA players, each of them vying for a spot in the quarterfinals.
I'm Adam Martinovic. I'm basically here to play in the FIFA Interactive World Cup.
I'm Sam Moore and I'm looking to win obviously the FIWC. I think I have a pretty good chance.
My name's Michael Palmer. I came up here yesterday from Canberra.
My name is Cameron Sharifi and I'm 14 years old.
The prize for qualifying here would be to go to Spain with a big chance of getting $20,000.
Don't particularly take a strategy in. I try to use the same formations and tactics each time.
This game is pretty much designed on counter-attack, so you don't get caught at the back. And I'll be using Real Madrid, so they got very fast players to do that.
I just like to get the team to press down and really charge up the opposition, not give them space at all.
Personally, I think you need to have vision, but really you can only get that in the game by playing the game. Once you figure out how to play it, then it all comes naturally after a while.
The lure of a ticket to Barcelona for the World Cup has been so great that the tournament has even attracted some international players. New Yorker Felipe Stoin, for example, has flown from the USA to compete here today.
As to me, football is in my heart. I'm a football player, and to me, FIFA is the same thing as playing real-life football or actually playing in the game, so I have the passion for it. It's not about just gaming or anything else. You can't have a simple strategy because every player plays different, so you gotta play each player and watch how they play and adapt to their playing styles and then continue on from there. I've got a good chance of winning, but this is FIFA, so let's not get cocky, but I feel confident, so let's play the game and see what happens afterwards.
Felipe's confidence was on the money because he made it into the finals easily, along with Sam Mort from Sydney and Michael Palmer from Canberra. Unfortunately, not everyone was as fortunate, with selected favourites Adam Martinovic and Cameron Sharifi lucking out in the eliminations.
I got really unlucky in that game, which is FIFA. That happens.
And I'll keep practicing online as well at home. I'm not going to stop playing.
With the eliminations behind them, our competitors look towards the finals where only the best of the best meet to compete on their way to the Interactive World Cup in Barcelona. After confident victories in the quarterfinals, both Felipe Stoin and Michael Palmer met each other in the semi-finals for one of the tournament's most exciting matches. The first 13 minutes of play went goalless, with each man refusing to yield an opportunity. But then this. With the score set 1-0 in Michael's favour, Felipe was praying to the heavens for a goal, and he was presented with a great opportunity just a minute later, but his prayers went unanswered as his attack was stopped by the keeper. Despairing stuff. By the 18th minute though, the gods seemed to have forsaken Felipe, with Michael making it 2-0. Finally, 41 minutes into the game, Felipe made a mark on the score sheet with this goal, which he then quickly followed up with this prayer-answering equaliser. It was a terrific effort. Celebrations were short-lived though, with Michael once again getting one step ahead of his rival with this goal just before half-time. Michael really took charge, driving home 2 more goals to secure his lead. Even this late goal by Felipe wasn't enough to keep his dream of heading to Barcelona alive, with the final score settling at 3-5.
I made a stupid mistake and I missed the goal, and that's what happened. It was my mistakes and it cost me the game.
Sam Mort won his semi-final match and moved on to face Michael Palmer in the grand final. Both were playing as Real Madrid, and the match positively rained goals right from the outset. Sam took control of the game early on with 1, 2 and then 3 goals, all in the first 20 minutes of action. At the end of the first half, Michael was grasping for a goal with this unlikely shot, but his ambitious tactics would eventually pay off, with his first goal landing in the 45th minute of play. Celebrations, well, they were short-lived. Sam Mort delivered 1 more goal in injury time and another at the start of the second half. Michael again attempted to claw his way back into the game with this skillful goal, but Sam replied with another 2 for good measure. With a 5-goal lead, the match was all but over for Michael, but he didn't give up, putting in this valiant effort before being steamrolled by yet another late-game goal from Sam, leaving the final scoreline at an impressive 8-3 and making Sam Mort the winner.
It all happened really fast, and I still don't remember it really well.
With about 20 minutes to go, I felt like it was over, and he kept saying to me, he goes, don't make it double figures. So, well, I won't say that I backed off the pace, but let's just say we did.
Pretty happy to make it as far as I've ever been in a live event, but yeah, I'm definitely happy for Sammy.
I'm sure when I get home I'll be pretty proud of what I've done today, and yeah, just really exciting now I get to go overseas.
Good game.
We've been hanging out for Splinter Cell Conviction for ages because no one quite does the sneak like Sam Fisher.
The thing you have to understand is this. Sorry about that. The Sam Fisher you knew is dead. America killed him, asked him to make one sacrifice too many, cross one line too far.
In Conviction, Sam is completely rogue, and it's more a personal story about finding out the reasons behind the death of his daughter. Thoughts, feelings, mission objectives are all splattered throughout the world as if beamed from an old-school projector. It's one of the creative new ways to tell the story.
Yeah, and they have been creative this time around, haven't they? Like the flashback tutorial mission at the start. And how whenever you learn something about your daughter, the music just kicks up and you hear these samples of your daughter's voice, and it just constantly tries to connect you emotionally to Sam and just enrage you to remind you why you're fighting.
Usually the storytelling in the Splinter Cell games is pretty rubbish, to be honest. You know, there's so many plot lines and characters and double crosses, and you never really know why you're doing what you're doing. It's more a case of just point me at what I need to pwn.
There are a few big changes to classic Splinter Cell gameplay. Now when you go into stealth, everything goes black and white except for enemies and environmental objects that you can interact with. And when you come out of stealth, the colour returns. And I pretty much hated that.
Really? No, it didn't bother me at all. I liked knowing when I was safe.
I felt it was a bit too helpful. It just took all the ambiguity out of knowing whether I was in stealth or not.
Perhaps they should have included an option to turn it off, but it was a stylistic decision to stop you from relying on light meters or sound indicators.
None of this is a deal breaker though, and I especially loved the ghosting.
Yes, now when you've been spotted and you return to stealth, a ghost appears in your last known position. Enemies will make their way towards it and throw grenades at it and generally harass that location until they realise you're long gone. It means you can now flank enemies and set up some pretty cool ambushes.
How long do you think you can hide, huh?
I can see how ghosting would be excellent for getting out of boring conversations.
Roger, come here. Look at this cat, it's fully standing up, it thinks it's people. Oh, look at him go. What is he looking at? And look at this one. Look at this one already, look. And now he's wearing a hat. And his little mariachi while playing the guitar. Is that the coolest thing I've ever seen?
The AI is pretty loud and there aren't enough voices in the game. Each area uses the same voice actor and they repeat dialogue over and over, and that was lame.
Shit, Fisher, you're hiding? How the fuck did you get dry cups? Fuck this!
They're also really dumb, on purpose so you can take them down, but you'd think after the 6th guy got pulled out of a window, the rest would just stop coming up to it and peering out.
You'll zip from cover to cover Gears of War style as holding left trigger flattens you against a wall with a pretty good lean and peek system. I especially love though that while you're dashing from point to point, if you realise it's not a good spot to hide, you just let go of left trigger and that cancels the dash so you can make your sneaky retreat.
The auto-aim is subtle, and when you make those perfect, precise shots, you just feel like a well-trained operative. You can mark a number of enemies for quick-fire execution, and the number varies depending on which weapon you're using. Pressing Y will take them all out in one fluid movement.
Control room on the other side of the ambassador's offices. Third echelon can use your OPSEC.
At first it might seem a little overpowered, but you can actually only perform an auto kill if you first earn the right by performing a manual takedown. There are times when you really need to use it, and pretty soon you'll be looking for those opportunities so that you've got an auto kill in the bank.
I like the human shields as well, because you also get the auto kill bonus for them, and when you bust into a room, take a human shield and just wipe out the entire floor, it just makes you feel like an action man. It did kind of bug me that during these auto kills, Sam's hand seems to clip the world and he shoots through walls, but you just let it go. In fact, you let quite a lot go here because it just works for the game.
Marking out-of-sight enemies with your fancy goggles makes for some pretty glorious assassinations.
Ryan. Huh? There's something. Fire! Contact!
Throughout the game, you'll also need to interrogate the odd honcho, and he won't give up the info until you've sufficiently roughed him up. There is no technique to these areas. They're just there to let you be a little bit creative with a combination of the environment and your opponent's face.
They're especially fun in co-op, taking turns, good cop, bad cop.
Bad cop, bad cop.
Yeah.
Listen to me, you little shit. I don't care who your new friends are. When I get out of this.
The campaign is about 8 or 9 hours long, and there's plenty of unique little interesting bits to pull you through, like a chase scene where you're not allowed to hurt anyone. Areas where it's game over if you're spotted once.
Forget it, Sam. They know you're there and the building's going into lockdown.
Some laser dodging. And even some uber goons with their own sonar vision. The laser stuff got a bit annoying, but everything else is there long enough so you don't get bored, but it's also not fleeting. But multiplayer is where we had the most fun.
Bykov has the location of the organization's headquarters, but we also need to know what he was trying to sell to the Azeris.
You can do it split screen or online, and there's a whole prequel campaign of about 5 hours where you play as a Russian spy known as Kestrel or an American agent called Archer.
Hold for kill order. Repeat, hold for kill order.
Yeah, co-op stealth is rare, but Splinter Cell does it really well. Plus, there's just as many great moments in the co-op as there is in the campaign, with a great ending. You will need to play this on realistic, though, because otherwise you'll only really need to coordinate your attacks maybe once or twice.
You can revive a fallen partner with your own personal portal defibrillator. If you're down, you can also take the risky move of sitting up and trying to cover your partner as they defibrillate you back to life.
Fight, you feeder!
Enemies can also chokehold you, and it's pretty stressful when this happens for the first time.
Yeah, and when you're in a chokehold and your partner's on the ground, it's quite intense trying to get out of that impossible situation. It makes me wonder, though, why my friend even needs defibrillating if he's already sitting up.
I like the way they sit up like meerkats. You can also play a whole bunch of modes in Deniable Ops, and these are single player or co-op. But our personal favourite is Face Off, which lets you set up the scenario and then it's just you versus goons versus the other player with extra points for taking down the human opponent.
From America with love, asshole.
If you get spotted, everyone, including the other human player, will see your ghost. And this makes for some truly awesome situations where traps are set up and victory can be swung to your advantage or disadvantage at the flick of a switch.
One thing I've always liked about Splinter Cell is when you kick things up to hard, it's a complete game changer. Suddenly, Sam can only take a few bullets before he's down, and every single encounter needs planning out and thought behind it, and maybe even a few retries. It just completely removes that renegade option, and that's what makes a good stealth game in my opinion.
Yeah, the threat of instant death makes all of your encounters more exciting, and it also makes you use all your gadgets because you need to.
Yeah, I almost forgot that I had them when I was playing on normal, and you just have to let that whole song play out on the sticky camera before detonating.
It's strange. Zjebana mać.
It's good you can choose to go renegade though, Barjo. Bashing through doors never gets old, and there were times when I just felt like strapping on an AK and letting loose. Although the early flashback mission, where the game forces you to kit up and everything's all SOCOM for a bit, was probably the weakest part of the game.
There's just so much to do in this game, and you can really tell that Ubisoft Montreal have thought long and hard about how to keep things interesting, and especially about how to keep that multiplayer worth revisiting. And for me, that's what kicked it up to a 9 out of 10 rubber chickens.
I like all the new gameplay changes, but I think they could still do a lot more with the series, particularly with the AI. It was just too predictable. Even so, Conviction is one of the better stealth games that we've played in ages. It's an 8.5 from me.
Good game.
So gamers, did you guess the game for this week?
It was the very first Settlers game released back in 1993 for Commodore Amiga and in 1994 for the PC. In America, it was released as Surf City, obviously some sort of surfing reference. That's the show for this week, but we will return same time, same place next week.
With the issue that divides gamers from non-gamers more than any other. Does playing violent video games desensitize you to real-world violence? Ajax meets an expert that claims to have proof that it does.
Plus, Monster Hunter moves from the PSP onto the Wii in Monster Hunter Tri.
If you like your social media, we have forums for you to troll here, or you can join the Facebook group called Good Game, or follow us on Twitter @GoodGameTV. Until next week, gamers, may all your games be lagless. Hex out.
Barjo out.
I've been meaning to ask this all episode. What is that thing on your leg?
Starting a trend.
You look like a Ninja Turtle.
I'm hip with the kids.
I'm totes hip.